Hey everybody, welcome to our the first installment of our continuous improvement series. Today we're going to be brainstorming about new tech, and we're going to be talking about some technologies that are on the radar, on our personal radars, and also on the radar that's published by ThoughtWorks. And we're going to be finding out what's lighting our fires, what's getting us excited about programming, and hopefully from that, over the next few days or weeks, we'll be using our excitement and our fire to fuel some changes and moves into new technologies at Eklund Avenue. So if you're on the YouTube site, then you're very encouraged to ask questions. To do that, you have to use the Hangout app, which is if you're in the YouTube page, there's a little bar inside the video. You can click that, and then you can go there and actually ask questions. You can also applause things, and there might even be a way to boo things. I'm not sure, but so on this call today, we've got Colin Callahan, CEO of Eklund Avenue. We've got Dante Dubon, which is one of our wonderful developers. Also, Luis Nunez, one of our wonderful developers. Osman Hernandez and Richard Siwadi, all wonderful developers on our team. I'm Byron Summerall, I'm the CTO. I'm going to try to talk as little as possible because I really want to hear from you guys, our developers, and I'd love to hear from Colin too because he's got his finger on the pulse of the technology community, at least in our part of the world. Actually, I'll pass this off to Dante because he was showing me earlier just some thoughts that he had been mapping out based on the stuff that he's been watching in the ThoughtWorks technology radar. So Dante, just take it away, and after Dante finishes talking, then you guys just feel free to continue going. And please, everybody else, ask questions, get in there and participate.
Yes, hello. Well, the radar of ThoughtWorks is very interesting because it's a kind of guidance of the currently technology trends. I have been studying the radar, and I spotted several technologies that we could use or we could explore. I prepared a kind of mental map to explain these technologies. The first is the threat modeling. This is important because I think we need to secure our applications and we need to deliver a good product with all. The threat modeling is a kind of a way to ensure it's like a framework. It's more like a framework that lists the most important attacks that web applications suffer. So the threat modeling list, and I found a kind of course on Pluralsight called Ethical Hacking that could be helpful to us to understand that and apply the principle to secure applications. That is the first thing that I think we need to implement from today. I marked with a red star the technologies and principles that I think are more important for us on this moment. The green stars are the technologies that we can explore and we could try without hurry. And I have the blue star to things that I believe we could study and try it later. No PSD. No PSD is about is design on the moment, the application on the moment. I believe our designer are already doing that. I think Jamil is using a Sketch. That is a wonderful, and also exists another tools like Origami for design. Only the things that for in the sprint are needed. No PSD is about not to design the entire site as a whole and design the site like more an agile way. For example,
It's cool to see that. Sorry, Dante. It's cool to see that even the design community is getting infected by the no XXX, no SQL, or whatever the no movement.
Yes.
even the no conference. So that's cool that even design is getting into that more agile.
Yes, it's cool because with no PSD, they encourage that the designer only design that the things that the client needs on this moment. Not they don't design the entire site and show an entire site functionally mocked, because is more that is a cascade way in the designer. So this is more agile. It's cool.
Yeah.
The another thing that I think that we need to implement right now is the BEM. What is BEM? BEM is about a framework to organize our CSS. I see that we have a problem with our CSS because most developers organize the CSS in his own way, and that causes a lot of confusion when we read that. And when we need to refactor our CSS, the CSS are a thing that we need to be very clear to all those developers of the team, because we need to be very aware of the effect of change a property or a class. BEM is more like apply object-oriented terminology to CSS to avoid errors and to avoid overrides. For example, BEM is very simple because it's only declare an object like like a block, element, and modifier. So with this example, for example, you have the three elements of the pattern. It's more like a naming pattern than like a framework. But you have the element, the block, you have the element, and you have the state. In this way, the CSS are more readable and more easy to maintain. Exists another kind of methodologies, but BEM is the most easily to understand and to study.
Hey, Dante, how does BEM interact with preprocessors like SAS or LESS?
BEM is already implemented on SAS and LESS because you have a single element, and you can inside of that element write the code from the state and on the modifier, for example.
So if we really embrace LESS or SAS, then we're also kind of automatically embracing BEM?
It's not automatically, but it's more easy to follow. In fact, BEM is more like adopt a composition strategy to to use a hierarchy like the traditional CSS.
Yeah, I think it's just something like a name standard, right? Something like we define a nomenclature for our components or elements.
Yes.
I think it will merge really well with technologies like SAS or LESS, because we could compone our components around this new structure of nomenclature.
Yes, it's very applies very well. In fact, SAS is already implemented, and LESS also. The last version of SAS has already a module for BEM, for example. It's very useful and very easy. The most important is it's very easy. The developer should not have to learn a great framework like SMAX or the others methodologies. So they only have to understand the naming convention, and it's very easy.
You guys can check out the Materialite project. I think those guys use the BEM already, and you guys can get a sense of.
Yes.
So
this is this is very clear, very easy to follow. So continuing, the BVF is about to create a backend for frontend. It's more an architecture pattern to have several microservices to serve a solution It's more like, for example, if you have an Android application, you will have a backend suited for that Android application, because every ecosystem has different necessities of data. So that is about this BFF. Docker is very special because I think we need to implement right now Docker to improve our own development, or our development cycle, because we could isolate our builds with Docker easily, and we could improve our dependencies also.
Can I ask something there, Dante? Maybe I'm not an expert in Docker, but will Docker work with any builds that are related with .NET or
yes,
those technologies? Yeah.
Yes, Microsoft has already invested a lot on Docker, and VS Code, for example, the editor of Microsoft is accepting the image of Docker to develop. It's very easy to use with Microsoft technology right now. It's more like a standard now.
Okay, so if we use something with Nancy or something like that, we can. Okay.
We can use it, and with that, we will be free of dependencies problems. That is a very nice thing. The other technique that I think we need to implement right now is the event storming. The event storming is about to model the domain of the application based on the events of the domain. That is a thing that is gaining mainstream on the community, because it's allowed to create a CQRS application more easily and more maintainable. Theo Brando is one of the most important developers on this area. We could learn about it. Also, Pluralsight has a course named Modern Software Architecture with event sourcing. Maybe we could explore it. The other thing that
let's take just a second for some questions. So Camilo is just confirming: is BEM more like a concept than a library? It's not really code. That you don't have to download like the BEM library.
No, it's more a conceptual framework.
Or a style guide, maybe?
Yes. No, it's more easy, because you only have to understand three parts. You have to understand the block. What is a block? What is the element? And what will be the modifier?
Okay, cool.
Only that.
Also, Renee was just kind of asking or making an observation that he thinks that we should learn SAS or less first in order to implement BEM.
That is not a requirement, because in fact BEM was designed to work with CSS, but without the hierarchies. Because one of the most important problem with CSS is the hierarchies, because the hierarchies are bad. Even in the object programming model, the hierarchies are a bad thing. You need to favor for composition, right?
Yeah.
It's the same principle here. With BEM, you are favoring composition. So less or SAS is a nice addition. It both allow the more easy implementation of BEM, but it's not a requirement per se.
We're already kind of moving down the road of doing SAS and less. We already have that on some of our projects.
Yes.
So we could kind of look at those two, not necessarily as married to each other, but we could do those both at the same time.
Yes. Yes. In fact, the site of BEM provides this link, building a modular with BEM and SAS. And here talk about implementing BEM with SAS, and this is the same principle that will be applied with less, because SAS and SAS do the same, but do the same.
Right, and Camilo says that he agrees with Renee. SAS and less helps you with BEM, and if you do less or SAS in a good way, you could have good CSS structure.
Yes.
So I tend to agree. I know that they're not necessarily married to one another, but I have a feeling that we can kind of go down the BEM road by going down the road with SAS and less, just paying attention to the BEM principles. Saul asks if there's a linter for BEM. I'm thinking
No,
there's not.
No, the linter apply to SAS and less, not for BEM, because BEM is only a concept of model.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like almost like the revealing object pattern in JavaScript. It's not a library. It's a principle or a concept.
Yes, or like the principle of solid patterns.
Right.
It's a solid
single responsibility pattern or a principle. There's not a library that you download for that necessarily.
Yes. You can see this code that this is SAS that is applying the BEM pattern.
Cool.
You have this the block, the
element,
and the modifier.
Yeah. So moving on to the concept of Docker, Camilo is just asking, what's the benefit of isolating the builds? What's the difference between that and AppVeyor, what we'd get from AppVeyor?
Oh, okay. Managing the dependencies of each of the environment are a bad thing if you do manually, because you can find several dependencies. Error, for example, when something is updated on NPM and you download that dependency, you could find an error and this become crazy. There are ways to manage that, but if you have a single instance, like a virtual machine, like in Docker, you are free of that.
I think
so you have a consistent way.
If we look at Docker versus anything from the perspective of a monolithic service or a monolithic app deployment, then Docker might feel a little bit like extra stuff that's not really necessary. But if you worked on Rewardle at all, then you remember how much extra work it was to deploy each service.
Yes.
We're about to work on that with NFIB, and we're going to learn from a lot of the mistakes and things that we learned from Rewardle, and we're going to do it again with microservices in NFIB, and we may not get to use Docker because with at least with .NET there's some extra complexity that we might not be able to tackle for that client. But imagine being able to from your development machine have an encapsulated VM that's just for that service, that small microservice, and then be able to deploy it and all the 10 or 20 other microservices with ease. That's one of the things that I've heard about that Docker provides. And Docker's not necessarily trying to replace AppVeyor or Circle CI or TeamCity. It's not trying to be a CI. It's trying to provide a way of doing CI that's small, isolated containers.
Yes.
Instead of you writing your own boilerplate for everything to get the stuff. So it's kind of a DevOps thing. It's not so much of a developer thing, more of a DevOps deployment kind of concern.
Yes, right. That is true.
Okay, some of the other questions are. I'll go ahead and mention that Krista is mentioning here that Framer.js is something that we should check out. Krista, if you want to, you can mention what Framer is about, and I'll mention that for you. But for right now, framerjs.com is something that Krista thinks that we should check out. It might have something to do with one of the things that you've already said, Dante.
Yes, I think
other questions that we have in here are about one's about mobile apps. So we'll get to that whenever we pass over that theme. Go ahead, Dante.
Okay, Flux. Flux is a CSS framework from Facebook. Last night I posted a game to learn Flex. Flex is gaining mainstream. I think we need to understand this framework because it's the base of the future of the CSS. Angular Material use a lot of Flux, for example. This is very important and very easy to understand. This is a major point, I think. Git flow. This is something that on the radar is listed like Hull. Hull is something like be aware or be careful with that. Git flow it talk about that we don't need to have a long living branch in our flow of Git. Currently, we have long living branches on our Gits. That is a bad thing because the code is old and is preventing the continuous integration. For that reason, I personally adopted the standard to delete my branch when it's merged because that code is old. When I merge a code, that code becomes old, and I start a new branch when I need to do a new thing, for example.
Cool. Okay, so basically the Git flow is deleting old branches and starting new ones on new features.
Correct.
Or
right,
fixing.
Because the new branch is integrated. The old branch is all call and doesn't have all the features that the other team wrote. So the old branch are dangerous, even are dangerous, because you could found errors of merging.
Yeah.
For example, it's better to delete it. Okay.
Camilo has a question. Are we already deleting branches after each merge? We are already deleting branches after each merge, right?
Yes.
I think this is the same NV model that we're currently using. So yeah, that's correct. I think what Dante discovered was that sometimes the lifespan of a branch becomes kind of long, and so the code gets old, and then we end up with some issues of having to rebase or having issues, merge issues, conflicts, and things like that based on the life of that.
Yeah, but I think that those are special cases.
It might be that the cards are too big also. Really, that it might be just like or didn't maybe it didn't finish on Friday and it went over the weekend and somebody else worked on the weekend. Who knows? The Git flow workflow is so similar to the NV model that it might even be the same thing. So we need to figure that out. We need to figure out how to make that better. If some devs are finding that some branches are getting old, then let's figure out a way to make that better for those devs and for devs in the future. Renee says that he likes the. I think Gitflow uses tags. We should start using tags. Yeah. We should use tags every time we release to production, at the very least. Tags are a great way to kind of like stick a flag in the mountain and say we've reached this goal.
But what should happen, for example, in this Gitflow flow? If I start a card and I leave it there and it gets like I don't know, maybe three months without work, what should happen to the small or the 3 or 2 commits that we added there? Should we just delete them and start them again?
If they've been there for that long, that code's dead, long dead.
Yes.
Unless for some reason you're deploying off of that branch, unless somehow that branch is part of a bigger picture. Which it's usually not.
What if it's a feature? Like, I mean,
well,
valid code.
We typically don't actually deploy directly from a branch, though. So even you've got a real feature, right, in a branch. The branch has been there for a long time and hasn't been merged into any deployable branch. So that means the code's never actually been tested. It's never been used. It never passed QA because it was never merged into a deployable branch.
But after you finish it, I'm guessing it's going to pass through all of that process.
Right. At that point, the branch is no longer needed. Once it gets merged into a deployable branch like develop, it's no longer needed, so it should be deleted.
Okay.
But there might be some understanding that I'm or some misunderstanding that I'm unaware of. But we can continue that conversation offline, just to keep the brainstorming flow going.
Okay.
Camilo has one more question here. To keep fresh branches, would that be a hero unit task? GitFlow was created by the same person who GitFlow is created by the same person who defined the Envy model. So will pruning the branches be a hero unit task? It might be. To me, there are two places where branches live, right? There's in GitHub, the mothership, and then there's our local Git repositories. Whenever I finish a feature, or if I'm merging a feature for someone in GitHub, there's that button for delete branch. I always click that.
Yes.
Every single time, so that it's gone from GitHub. But it's probably not really gone from my local machine. After a year of working in a project, I've probably got hundreds of branches in my local machine that I don't really need. But that doesn't bother me because I don't typically do git branch to list all the branches. It doesn't bother me much.
It's useful also to keep them in local, just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Dante, go for it.
Okay, on platforms, the Radar talk about two-factor authentication. I believe this is something that we could study and see the way to implement in our boilerplate. Maybe a client will ask about it because this is a major trend on the security stuff. And the HTTP strict transport security is about to configure our boilerplate to ask to be served on HTTPS. That is only a tag on our boilerplates. That could be done very easy.
Yeah.
And for tools, Consul. Consul is very interesting because Consul talk about a way is a tool, right, to manage the Docker instance. This could be very useful if we implement Docker. Git-creep. Git-creep is something that we need to implement right now to encrypt our Git repos to not allow to be stolen, for example, or to leak data sensitive like Amazon credential or Azure credential that could be used for mining stuff, for example.
Bitcoins.
Yes, Bitcoins. GitDrop
is that only for public repos, or are we saying that it's possible that you could have a private repo and things be stolen?
It could be stolen because, for example, we have our code on our local machines, and maybe, for example, Osman perceive a virus, and that virus stolen all the code, for example, is something like crazy like that. So Git-creep is about that.
Or maybe you're planning to move the project to an open source state, or maybe down the road, and it's pretty hard to remove the history if you already added that.
Yes.
That credential.
So I believe we need to use Git-creep right now in our projects to secure our Git repos. This is very useful and very easy to use. It's a tool, only that. And also exists GitDrop. GitDrop is more like reactive solution to this problem to have this the credential on the code because GitDrop scan your repos and say, oh, this repo has this sensitive information. This is very useful and very easy to use. IndexedDB It's about the IndexedDB. I mark like something that is already implementing in a project that Rene is using because the new trend on web apps is about to have the web apps offline. So IndexedDB is a modern database on the browser that could be used to allow the offline behavior. And local storage is more like an entity framework for IndexedDB, for example, and local storage is a way to manage that. This is very interesting, and I believe we could implement it in our boilerplates to allow the offline communication.
I think offline first is going to get bigger and bigger with every day.
Yes, it's the trend, and we could explore it with IndexedDB. In fact, on Pluralsight exists a course about it with Angular. It's very interesting. OWASP attack is a tool that performs an attack with the OWASP framework and inform if the application follow or is affected by some security issue. We could use it like a hero unit task to scan our application and see, okay, this application has this problem, and we could address right now.
I say QA should be in charge of that.
Also, it could be. It's only a tool. They could use it easily.
Sharon has actually been working a lot on learning about security stuff and teaching our QA testers to be white hat hackers. So, Sharon, I hope you're watching, and I hope you're seeing that link right there. That's awesome.
Yes, they could use it perfectly. I have these three tools that QA could use it, and I think it's very interesting for there. Gauge is a framework to write tests for what I say.
Browser automation tests?
No, it's not browser automation tests. It's acceptance. Right. It's acceptance tests.
For APIs?
Yes, for APIs. So this is something written by FlukeWorks, and it works very easy because it has a simple syntax. The QA team need to write code, right? But it's very easy, and the acceptance tests are a thing that we need to implement right now in our project because I think we have that lack because we are only doing unit tests, and the unit test is only the base of the test. Right. With acceptance test, we could raise the level to ensure the necessity of the client.
We did a lot of acceptance tests on our APIs with Rewardle, and we had a lot of very valuable tests in RunScope. We also learned a lot of lessons from that and had some pain from that as well. But right now, Rene and the guys working on Blue Jedi are actually using Postman for AATs on the API for Blue Jedi. And then this is Gauge. This would be a good one to also try. Javier is sharing a link with TE52. I'm not sure whether that's if that has to do with testing, but I'll throw that one out there as well.
Okay, Gauge is a cross-platform. By the way, it works with JavaScript and C# and Java. The other thing that could be interesting for quality assurance, it could be this thing, EEVMs. It's about to have a virtual machine with Internet Explorer. This is very interesting because you can have all these image with only Internet Explorer and to test it.
So they have that already, but this looks like it's more like a command line driven thing, or maybe a quicker installation for those VMs.
It's a quick installation because you need to use VirtualBox. You only have to change the virtual machine. This could be useful for that.
It's so sad that we have to have entire VMs to test one version of a browser. Anyway, continue.
Browser sync. Browser sync is a thing that is already implemented on Unicron on or boilerplates that allows that you access to an application to an URL, and you can have the synchronize the behavior of that application among several devices. So you can click in one device, and that action will be performed across the device. This is very interesting to test several screens and several devices. I think QA could see this stuff and see if this will be helpful for their. I believe that yes, it's very interesting.
Cool.
The next thing is RAML or Swagger. I believe we need to start a designer or APIs and document with these tools. We have the experience with Rewald, but the correct design of a web API should be designed first, the API, and document with these kind of applications or frameworks. Sorry. This course of Pluralsight talks about that. You need to design first the web API, and later you develop. But I am not talking about a huge design. I am talking about only a simple design to start.
One that is changeable.
Yes. And RAML is very easy to use. For example, this is the example they put, and the documentation that they provide is some kind of live documentation, because RAML could generate a client to test it. This could be useful for integration with other teams, for example. Right. And in language and framework, I believe we need to start using React.js and React Native. React is something that is breaking the news and is gaining a lot of traction. I believe this is a good point to start with the new technologies. And also, I believe we need to start implementing C# 6, because right now we are using C# 5. But with the new version of C# is very interesting and has a lot of improvements and a lot of things that will be helpful for our developments. And I would like to mention about the use of Meteor. Meteor.js is something that is gaining traction also. In fact, Coursera has a course about it. This is interesting. Only that, Byron.
Okay. By the way, when we have these brainstorming sessions, Dante is constantly watching this ThoughtWorks radar. So he's always got a lot of things to share about new technologies. So when we have these, it doesn't always have to be Dante presenting that. It could be anybody in our team that's just excited about some technology. So at this point, okay, I'll tackle a couple of the questions in here, and then I'll open it up to Richard and Osman and Luis and maybe Colin to just throw out, with the remaining time that we've got, just some more technologies that we might want to think about. So Renee would like to know our thoughts about Visual Studio Code. I would as well. So let's talk about Visual Studio Code briefly.
I believe Visual Studio Code is a major point and a major player right now, because the team of Angular is already using. I see the conference of Microsoft the last week, when a developer of Google goes to the Microsoft conference and talk about how wonderful is Visual Studio Code and how helpful is that IDE for the development of Angular 2. That is a thing that is valuable, because it's Google talking about a product of Microsoft. The things are changing.
I've been using Visual Studio Code on a side project, and I know that you can. Debugging has been around for a long time. I know that, but debugging in Visual Studio Code, a Node app, was like, my tools are back.
Yes.
And so I was able to actually set a breakpoint in Node. Again, I know that that's been around for a long time, but having it right there in my editor, it was just so nice. And Visual Studio Code is like super snappy too. So it reminds me of Sublime and Atom as far as like it's or not Atom. What's that other one called? Maybe it is
Sublime.
Atom. Sublime as far as its snappiness. So it's very. I've been enjoying it a lot. Renee says since we're using TypeScript, Visual Studio Code is awesome when you're coding with TypeScript, but it sucks when you're doing HTML. So
yes.
maybe Dante, maybe you can send an email to Scott Guthrie to tell him what to do there.
Yes.
Is there a way to add breakpoints to Atom or any of the other?
No.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Osmond's probably got a cool plugin that you can add.
I haven't found it. I always use the debug function of Node, like in the command line, and you can set a breakpoint on the browser, but not on the editor.
So for in Visual Studio Code, you can actually set a breakpoint right there, just like you do in Visual Studio, the little red ball, and then it stops there, and you can hover your mouse over the different variables and see their values, and it's really cool.
Yes, in fact, Visual Studio Code has some refactoring thing that, for example, WebStorm doesn't have. Visual Studio Code is something that has feature. The main leader of Visual Studio Code is Eric Gama, and Eric Gama is a major player because he is one of the Gun of War,
oh, yeah.
that write the object-oriented patterns book.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Probably Atom has one. I put it on the chat. I think
cool.
Atom has. Okay.
All right. Well, the rest of you, me and Dante are going to shut up for a little while. The rest of you all feel free to share. I'm going to mute before the train comes. Any new technologies that you guys are excited about, even if it's something that Dante has already mentioned?
Well, I've been looking at Ionic 2, but I haven't tested out like much. But that's something that I like since we're not doing native yet, and the ones that we're using currently are like, So I did like Ionic 2 because they're trying to, for example, we're using Material Design in a lot of our apps, and most or some of the community that develops for iOS, they're like, Material Design. They're like, we prefer our style. So the cool thing about Ionic 2 is that they keep the iOS style and they keep Material Design on Android. So you develop the same code base and you get different styles for each of the apps. So that's something I really like. And, well, I don't have much else to add.
Camilo asks, have we already discussed mobile technologies and what's the plan for the near future for mobile projects? He's got 4 pluses on that, so there's more that would like to know about that. So why don't you guys talk about what you think we should do mobile-wise?
I think we should at least test in one project going full native. I mean, because most of the tools we're using currently, we do the native or the hybrid way of doing things, but we end up doing small fixes for specific platforms. So at the end, we're doing the same thing we would do on native, targeting different
at major cooks.
For different. Yeah, so that's something that I don't like when we develop hybrid apps. It's basically the same, and I think the only argument we have against native apps is that we're going to do 2 repositories and 2 code bases, and I don't know what you guys think about that, but we should at least try in one project going native.
Richard, do you think you're saying that you do some tweaks for each device, but it seems to me that it must still save some time. You know, it seems like it would save significant time. Is that not true?
It does save time, but at the end the client gets what we do, right? At the end we're doing like a web app inside of an application, and it doesn't feel as snappy as a mobile app. So we get sometimes apps that work a little slow, and
But I mean, if we do two native, shouldn't we have like two different designs? Because like Android components don't look the same as iOS, so you cannot
yeah,
present the same mockup to the
it might
client.
take a little more time, but I'm guessing that the result is it's a lot more snappier, better, and well, that's my point of view.
Hey, Luis.
Oh, go ahead, Byron.
Luis, can you tell us about your experience with Curo?
Okay, for example, in Curo, we started with the Supersonic framework because it has a workflow of making builds with AppGyver, and then we encountered a problem with the installation of a plugin, so we moved to a vanilla Cordova. In this Cordova project, we use Ionic as the framework because it uses Materialize and has all the positive sides that Richard already says. And yeah, in the forums there is a lot of concern in that part, in that point that teacher said about the native feel like of the apps. For example, we in Curo in the app, I have encountered some bugs of those little ones that take not significant a lot of time of work, but if we join all of them, it's probably like a half a sprint or something like that. And those bugs are something like as we are simulating a web app inside an app inside the web browser of Cellphone, we have something like delays in the rendering time, and we see icons that shouldn't be in there. We have to go to the code and hide them and then show them again when the app is loaded. So there is a lot of work in to fix that kind of bugs because of the time that the rendering takes to complete the emulation.
Something else that I might note currently in a project we're working on, the client requested some functionality that at this moment it doesn't exist in PhoneGap. So there's only two ways: either we build something to wrap around that thing, and we're still doing native since we have to do two separate things for Android, one for Android and one for iOS. And PhoneGap doesn't supply that, so I'm guessing it might depend on the project. If the project is like really simple, going a hybrid way is the way to go. But if we're doing like complex things, like the one I'm describing, like for example adding a scanner to your app inside of the app, not just opening the app and doing things in the app directly, but inside of your hybrid app, things like that might get a lot complicated when doing hybrid apps. So that's why going native might be a better idea, at least on those specific cases.
Yeah, in the Curo project, for example, we got lucky because there was already a plugin for the thing that we needed. But for example, when we were in that step of the project, we confronted that problem. Rene and Camilo said that probably what we will need to be a good hybrid projects team is to learn how to make those plugins for ourselves and not rely in the community, because probably there are a lot of bugs like we found in that part. That bug, for example, that the plugin wasn't complete or wasn't. It's not like it wasn't complete. It's just that it needed a manual step, but we couldn't do that because we weren't in charge of the installation process. So we have to change the whole platform to go around that bug. So probably we will need to learn that as a team to make for ourselves the plugins that we will need.
So Richard mentioned, and a few others, Camilo always brings it up, and Rene mentioned it too, native. What about React?
The thing is that that's new, so we can test it out, and supposedly they render things, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
The React Native framework had like a whole different syntax, and you had to know about Android and iOS development before using React Native because it had a lot of like same principles as doing a native app. So
But at the end, it's just one code base, right?
Yeah, I think you use React Native when you come from making native apps in iOS and Android, and you want to stop making two code bases, and then you use React Native to just have one.
In fact, it could be two code bases because they use several components, different components, because it's native. The major benefit of React Native is to have a common way to do the application, to work with the applications, because you don't have to know, you don't have to write code in JavaScript, in Java, sorry, and code in Objective-C. You have only a common understanding, but could be two code bases.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same as NativeScript,
Yes.
which I think gets Java, and you create a button for.
Is that similar to Xamarin? Does it compile down to native code?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Similar to Xamarin.
Yes, similar to Xamarin.
The only difference is that I think it's free, but I don't know if Xamarin's paid. It's a paid option, or if it's free already. I don't know. So that might be the only difference in JavaScript instead of C#.
Yeah, Xamarin is expensive, but so are we. So we can just pass that on to our clients and give them savings in the time. If Xamarin's the right way, if React's the right way, or if full native is the right way, whatever we do, we'd be doing it because it's the best option for us as developers and then also for our clients.
Yes, I will say that I would like to try React Native in a boilerplate, to create two boilerplates, one for iPhone and for Android, and see what is the major benefit. I think this will be the most easy way to find if this is a exact way to tackle the problem.
Cool. Anybody else have anything that you want to throw out there? Our time is coming to an end, but nobody's mentioned Go. Golang.
I never used that.
Or Erlang. Not mobile tech, just like back-end tech. We probably need to have one of these meetings one day just about front end or just about back end.
Yes.
And Renee's right. We don't have a boilerplate for mobile app front ends. When we talk about now anymore, like the days of Ruby on Rails and ASP.NET MVC rendering your HTML are gone. We're sprinting away from that. Anymore, there's a very clear line between front end and back end, and front end for web is obviously HTML, CSS, JavaScript, maybe even mixing in React in there. For back end, it's kind of up in the air. Right now, we're doing a lot of Node and C#, or Node and .NET, and hopefully we'll get to do more and more Node and less .NET. To me, it just seems more fun. But yeah, we probably are most passionate right now about front end because it's a thing that it takes the most time, really. The back end seems to be a breeze because we've got it down to a science.
Yes.
But I like Renee's idea about we don't have a mobile project, so I created a channel so that maybe we can throw ideas there, and if someone tests React Native, they can give their thoughts and maybe see if we can start one. Because in my experience, I've worked on like in 2 or 3 mobile apps, and we end up doing the same thing again and again and again. So it will really help us save some time.
Yeah, and even if we were to go full mobile, we're still creating a back end. And the back end is still in the technologies or it could be any technology, back end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might want to, I mean, this seems like the mobile discussion seems to be, never mind just front end, but the mobile discussion seems to be at least worth having a 30-minute, discussion about, if not an hour, and maybe we should just schedule that in the near future so that we can, hear everybody's thoughts on that, because I have a lot of questions about it, but we don't have time right now to get into it.
Yeah, I'll schedule something.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Well, this has been a great call. I've really enjoyed it. I hope everybody in YouTube has felt connected enough to want to throw out questions. There have been several questions. Thanks for your participation. I know that for some reason the applause button has disappeared. Maybe Google decided to get rid of it. I thought it was a great idea, but we'll have another one of these soon, and we can have the same panelists, or we can rotate panelists. And I want to thank Colin for joining us. It's kind of an honor to have someone of your importance on a little call with us like this.
Don't be silly.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, and back to work.
Bye.
Bye.